The 1970s are considered to be the golden age of heavyweights, with Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier shining at the time, for which other prominent boxers receded into another plane. One of these boxers will be discussed. His name is Lyle, who was called the best killer boxer, and you'll soon understand why. Ron was born in 1941 in Ohio, and he was one of 19 in the family. At the age of 13, he and his family moved to Denver and settled in one of the most criminal areas, where every black guy was in street gangs. Ron was no exception and also went down the slippery slope of crime. When he was 19, in one of the showdowns with a rival gang, he killed a 21-year-old boy, and for this he was sentenced from 15 to 25 years in prison. While in the boxing ring, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman began to shine, whose paths with Lyle will cross in the future. Ron had to master the path of survival in prison. In one of the prison fights, he was cut with a knife and spent 3 months in the prison hospital. According to Ron, he suffered 2 clinical deaths and needed a transfusion of 18 liters of blood. After his recovery, he began training in boxing with one of the prison officers who was a former trainer. He realized that boxing is exactly what he wants to connect his life with, and he perfectly suited his explosive nature. Participating in prison fights, Ron lost only his first meeting, and later he forgot what the bitterness of defeat was. He said that while sitting alone, he was fed 1 spinach and tried to make him a herbivore. But despite all these difficulties, he did push-ups 1,000 times a day and prepared himself for pro boxing. One day, he had a dream in which he fights for the heavyweight title against Muhammad Ali, while the greatest wins. So Ron had the motivation to leave prison and meet Ali now in real life. After 7.5 years in prison, Ron was released. He found a boxing gym and began diligently preparing for his debut in amateurs. Lyle's career as an amateur lasted only a little over a year, and during this time he won 25 fights with 17 knockouts and 4 lost. He became the champion of the International Boxing League and was a member of the USA national team. Ron also managed to compete with Muhammad Ali once, and he stood with him for 4 whole rounds.
Tell him, let somebody tell Frazier that this fella's a good amateur and he's not out for no reputation. Give him a good little boxing lesson, but don't hurt him. But if you make Frazier look too bad, which I believe you will, because you're a good boxer, see, Frazier you'll hit him all night with those jabs that you don't hit me with, but you'll hit him all night. But I tell you, watch him, because he might feel bad if you jab him a little too much. Be on the lookout, because he might try to tag him.
On April 23, 1971, 30-year-old Ron had his first fight as a pro and then did a real sweep of the heavy division, winning 18 fights in a row, while only 2 came to a decision. In 1973, he stumbled in a fight against another prominent representative of that era, the Jerry Quarry, who several times came close to the finish line with Ron, but our hero held out and brought the fight to a decision. It was Lyle's first defeat. After which he once again got on the winning path by winning 11 fights, and former world champion Jimmy Ellis found a place on this list. Ron was confidently moving towards the championship fight, and even despite being defeated by Jimmy Young at 75, he got the coveted chance to come out against the greatest, so Lyle's dream began to come true. Now all he had to do was not lose and try to take away 2 champion titles from Ali that were at stake. This, not the most spectacular fight, Ron started active and threw out more punches. He pressed Ali to the ropes, and each blow or combination ended with a clinch on both sides, so you could hear the disgruntled spectators whistling who were expecting the action. In the 5th round, Ali added a little in movement, since before that he did not move much and stagnated at the ropes. But despite the more active robot on the part of Ali, until the 11th round he lost on the cards of 2 judges and 3 had a draw. Ali shook Ron with a right cross and, preventing him from recovering, squeezed Ron into a corner and delivered multiple punches until the referee intervened and stopped the fight. Ali won and retained his world titles, and Ron strongly disagreed with this early stop. But one way or another, Ron missed his opportunity to become the world champion and repeated the plot that he had already seen in his dream while sitting alone.
Well, Foreman, he was a puncher. He was a good puncher, but the best puncher that I ever faced was Ernie Schaefer's. He had 40-some knockouts in the first round. I mean, some guys don't have that many fights, you know what I mean? So Schaefer's record pretty much dictated how the fight was going to go if you stood in front of him, you know?
Ron did not lose heart and went on to his next fight, and his rivals were Ernie Shavers, nicknamed Puncher of the Century. This is the man with the strongest punch in boxing history. This fight reached the 6th round, in which two terrible punchers decided the outcome of this meeting. Ron won this duel, sending Ernie to a beautiful knockout and thereby closing the offensive defeat to Ali. Everything that happened in Ron's career up to this point was just a prelude. An uncompromising duel with lowered hands and a bunch of knockdowns, which literally in a couple of rounds contained a sea of events and became the best fight in '76, according to the Ring magazine. It was a confrontation between Ron Lyle and George Foreman. The main question before the fight was what form Big George was in, since after the Rumble in the Jungle and losing his titles to Muhammad Ali, he did not appear in the ring for over a year, and the defeat to Ali was the first in his career with 40 wins. The first round was exploration and turned out to be pretty calm. Although in the end, Ron hit well with a right hook. In the second round, boxers more and more often began to arrange exchanges and regularly hit each other well. At the end of the second leg, George pulled Ron to the ropes and gave him some good punches. After the gong, it was clear that the tension was increasing. Ron spent almost the entire third round at the ropes under fire from Big George, but Lyle himself did not forget to counterattack and hit with blows towards him. But then it was time for a clean cut that does not need comment. Ron twice dropped Foreman, and the second knockdown was really hard, but luckily for George, he got time to recover. It was a fierce mix in which each of the boxers was very close to fly to the knockout, and especially Foreman, who was shirking Lyle's heavy punches during the whole round. But despite this, he managed to finish Ron and win the fight. Later, Foreman admitted in his autobiography that this fight was one of the most difficult in his boxing career.
That's something. Only certain guys can do that. Ron Lyle was one guy who could hit you so hard it didn't hurt. No one else did.
After this knockout, Ron Lyle lost ground quite a bit and did not look like himself until the very end of his career. And in 1980, after a knockout in the first round by Jerry Cooney, he hung up his gloves and ended his boxing career. "15 years later, following the example of George Foreman, Ron retired from retirement, intending to arrange an act of down-to-earth revenge between two veterans while he was already over 50. He won 4 victories over not the most famous opponents, but the rematch with Foreman never took place. Then Lyle ended his career again, and this time for good. Then he trained amateur boxers and worked as a security guard in Las Vegas. And one day, Ron committed murder again. This time, he shot his cellmate for reasons unknown to us. The court regarded Lyle's actions as self-defense, and the former boxer, who was tacitly called the best among the killers, was acquitted. On August 26, 2011, Ron Lyle died due to a complication of a stomach ailment and will be remembered in boxing history as one of the best heavyweights of the 70s era, who only went pro at 30 and made a lot of noise there. But unfortunately, he could not become the world champion. That's all for now, dear friends. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to press the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comments. See you in the ring soon.